Yeah, same speakers, new topics. So now we're going to dive deeper into what's going to be the future of blockchain marketing. Yeah, looking forward to the insights. Please give an applause to our speakers again. Yay! Maybe we can, everybody, sit down and find a seat. This is going to be not the last.
Yes, all right. Okay, so I guess my first question, I kind of want to change the order that I had here. What do you think is social media as we know it going to become relevant? And the reason I bring this up is because of all the heated debate that's currently going on right now with Twitter and essentially like people like Vitalik having to say, no, I'm not giving away Ethereum on his actual account. So, what do you think will happen with social media as we know it? Are platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., are they still going to be relevant in the next few years, especially for like the crypto blockchain space?
Okay, I think at least in the short term they'll just keep doing what they're doing, but I think at least when we see a larger wave of adoption of blockchain-related solutions, they will morph into something that I think hopefully will allow their users to select whichever personal data they want to provide and allow that platform to be used for advertising purposes or to be shared with the public. Like it's too limited right now. I think most people don't even most of the population doesn't really know which information is used to target them with the specific ads, and they do stuff, but it's the social platforms like try to communicate that and they try to find solutions to make it more transparent, but it's in my opinion not really working, and I think blockchain would be a nice solution for that. So yeah.
I think they will still be relevant. There's just more and more popping up, and it also depends on what audience you're targeting. And if you're targeting, just as an example, South Korea, they have Kakao Talk, I think, which is pretty successful. And if you're not there, you're not in the market. So maybe there's a certain trend to focus on more special target groups and and you have to choose your network, and you can't just use a shotgun to reach everybody, as you can maybe still do on Facebook. Or so you have to really pick your platform, and I think there's going to be more, but the ones we have today are probably not going away. And looking back, that's exactly the case. Bitcoin Talk, for example, that's been mentioned a couple of times, has been relevant for years now, and it's still relevant. You said you don't know what to do with it. It's still great for SEO because it's the biggest crypto site, and if you can really push your links in there, you get good rankings on Google. So that's one use case, and that's what all the campaigns
have 24 million users a month. I just don't understand why anyone would want to look at it.
Yeah, I guess that's one reason why you would use it. And there's others. So every platform is relevant for one case, and I don't think these cases are really going away. And others are coming out stronger. Like Telegram has really been booming over the last 2 years, and maybe 3 or 4 years ago, nobody was using that. Really, it was just one weird messaging app, and it for some reason really found its use case, that's just my personal perception, but in a big use case in the crypto space.
It's interesting because it feels like almost with blockchain, we're going back to the early days of the internet where a lot of things happen in forums and not necessarily sort of Web 2.0 where it's happening in social media. So, I'd love to sort of bring that into the discussion. And anything else to add?
Sure. So I will get to that. I just would also like to say that most people today, to find out about something, use Google. So as the internet gatekeeper, the fact that we are not allowed to market our ICO is a shutdown. And I find that unfair. But I do find the Facebook ban reversal a positive signal. In terms of these conversations happening in social forums, I personally find that it's a lot easier to speak to a small group of people about something so specific because it is quite early. I think in general, we're definitely at the .com financial high place, but in terms of infrastructure, very still early.
Okay, so on the big social media players, not only are they still relevant, they're going to become, those businesses are elegant and they're going to continue to grow and boom. And it's like Facebook's on track. They may hit $1 trillion. Like they have the world's largest database of the world's most useful personal data, and they're going to use it, and they are using it in all sorts of ways. And we're going to need to interact with them just like everybody else, and they're going to make sure of that. But it doesn't mean that things are only going to be that way. There's lots of alternative paths. We have alternative and new social media coming up. Things like Minds and Steemit may not be successful, even if they have large multi-million user bases now. But something like them will probably make sense because the incentives are so large. On the other hand, the crypto's aversion to taking control of data and using it to curate experiences is actually a huge vulnerability. Because if you can't compete with Spotify's ability to curate the best playlist for your mood, you can't compete, period. And Spotify crushes you because you just can't provide a better service. And nobody cares that much about their data that they're going to sacrifice the time to do all the work themselves. So yeah, we got to figure out a way to deal with that because machine learning is not going away.
I recommend everybody to stop using Spotify. They pay artists the least out of any streaming service. Side point. Apple's actually better than them. I'm not saying promoting them. There's others too. What are we talking about? So I don't think we can hit a new wave of mass adoption without social media. I think it's really backwards thinking to think that we can get there, and the market's going to suffer because all we're going to see is that the current holders are just going to get deeper in it. Have a fiat job to fund your crypto, right? Show of hands. But I think in terms of really to see the adoption, we need social media. I think Facebook's turn of events is a really good sign. I think Twitter's handling of this space has been just pathetic in the slightest, or slightest. But switching to a different platform like Steemit or Peepith or something like that I think that's just grandiose and idiotic, and also leaves vulnerabilities because you're just leaving all these impersonators to do what they want. Case in point, Svandis and a host of other cryptocurrency companies and Binance and now CZ and Charlie Shrem have actually signed on to an open letter that we put out to Twitter and good old Mr. Dorsey about this. You can read it. It's been retweeted like crazy. So if you want to endorse that as well, it's not a promotion of us. We're just trying to change this because they're like, hey, don't advertise on us. But hey, here are all these ether scams. We want to protect our users, but here are all these ether scams. And so I want someone that has hundreds of thousands of followers to put not giving away crypto. But okay, back to the question. I think it's really important to focus on content because yeah, we can't control whether or not we're going to get blocked, but we can control whether or not we're getting our message out there. And that's where Google is our friend, Bing, whatever anybody else uses. And that's where, talking about your product over time, doing it on a weekly basis in a consistent fashion, like Medium, for instance, will drive people to your website. It just does. Medium drives. Medium, we have an active, some communities, but and like Telegram and others, but Medium drives 80% of our traffic. And that's you should see the conversion rates on that. It's just phenomenal. So focus on content.
Social media to me is just another paid channel. So you should be using it the same way that you're going after content or SEO or PR or any other marketing channel. But like Mitchell said, it's not going anywhere. Organic, reach on Google and Twitter and Facebook, or more Facebook and Twitter, regardless of the ban, is non-existent for companies. And I think people in the crypto space are going to have to market there if they can, the same way any e-commerce company or anyone else does, which is basically pay to show people your content, pay to show people your videos, pay to show people your product.
If I may just add also to answer the question directly, if they'll still be relevant. I think that if there will be, and I hope there won't be, another Cambridge Analytica situation, so if there will be another situation like that, I don't think social media like Facebook will be relevant, because I think people are becoming more and more aware of the value of their data. And I think that those of us working in blockchain, we take it very seriously, because you should be in control of your own data. It should be you who owns it. For example, every quarter, Facebook makes like $25 per user just on ads using your data. And I think that money should go back into your pockets, not Facebook.
Right. I mean, I think in the crypto blockchain world, like that's sort of the utopic belief. But I personally, as a marketer, I don't know if people really understand the value of their data. And I think, like, I mean, especially when you see people on Instagram taking so many selfies, like, I mean, do you really care about your data at the end of the day? I think, I mean, it just got a lot of press just because who knows, like, what was the agenda for it? But yeah, I don't know if I fully agree. So, I mean, something I'd like to bring up, and this wasn't necessarily in the questions, is that the importance of lead acquisition. Something we really didn't talk about. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of importance around sort of like building a community, but I mean, what about the importance of actually having an email list and sort of lead acquisition? Like, what did you guys do when you were sort of doing your token sale with Celsius?
So again, I mean, this is pre and post ICO, right? But during our crowd sale, leads for us were basically syndicates and pools. So we were trying to raise at least 80% of our funds pre-sale before we had our public sale. The average retail investor is going to invest about $1,000. The pre-sale investor is going to invest 100,000 plus. So it's significantly more money. And so we were trying to use our Telegram in order to get access to the whale pools and the syndicates that were going to bring in the big contributions for us.
I mean, I believe in using email lists. Basically, every medium that you really should use. I think that's something that's okay. I think it's a fiduciary responsibility of ICOs and crypto companies, if they're crowdsourcing their funds, to send emails the old-fashioned way, and sending it to those that contributed. If they unsubscribe, that's their problem. But I think being transparent is something that crypto harks on a lot, but fails to actually execute on to an unholy extent. And I'd like to see that end. So whether it's like Telegram, email, Facebook, just pound it out and people will unsubscribe. And then over time, if you see it just drops and your open rates drop, then that's your sign. But if not, I mean, our email open rates with like thousands of users is like 90%. So it's relevant.
It's also a great way to build credibility, because people see that you're being transparent, that you're constantly communicating with them. We do an update every week. There's an update from either myself or the CEO, just talking about what's going on, that we put on a blog post and in an email to, again, try to be as transparent as possible. But it's not really a lead acquisition strategy.
I like that, what you said there. Fiduciary duty. Beautiful words in our space. That's a general question.
Probably caused my token price to drop, though.
It might, be careful, man. You didn't say a damn thing. It was me. So, like, the email list is probably one of the most useful assets that you'll have post token sale. Obviously, doing like investor relations reports it's pretty useful to keep everybody up to date, and it's also your main channel where you're going to be able to call your more serious supporters in one form or another, depending on how well you've chosen your starter market, depending on how well you chose the people who you allowed to contribute in the first place, in whatever form that was. Maybe it was an airdrop, maybe you just gave it away to someone. Depending on how you curated them, they're probably going to be accessible by email. The most valuable people with whatever services or professional skills they have tend to be, or the most valuable networks as well. So keeping them up to date is great, but that's also where you're going to be able to make your asks. So say if you're doing something B2B and you're keeping them up to date there, that can be great because you only need one or two of them to respond when you give an ask. It's like, hey, we want help with some intros to companies with X, Y, and Z profile. Does anybody know someone who occupies that kind of position who could set us up, either to do a trial or something of the kind? That'd be great. And then if you're curious about lead acquisition for, say, token sale matters, well, then you're basically just talking about investment banking. And there's two ways to do it. You can do it the VC way, which is you get Andreessen Horowitz in or someone, and everybody follows through the door because they're convinced that they've done their due diligence, even though that probably doesn't mean anything. In that case, the crypto analog is probably Polychain. Or if you do it the investment banking route, a la Goldman Sachs, which is everybody knows each other and they have a giant Rolodex, and they're like, okay, we can introduce you to the right people. But that's just how life works. The lessons that we're growing up and learning on lead acquisition for raising money is the lessons that have already been learned in every other financial market, which is finance.
So yes, absolutely. If people opt in to hear from you, then definitely communicate with them. But I think as a rule, I find that over-communicating when there's not much news to share can be kind of spammy. So I think it's best to, rather than say like, oh, you should communicate every XYZ time, to communicate every so often with some news to share. And in terms of lead acquisition, if this person believes in what you're doing, they are much more likely to have friends that they can refer to you as well. So I think that is very, very helpful as well, to send out an email, make sure it's simple and there's a clear call to action, and don't be afraid to ask for referrals as well. It works well, I think.
Well, on top of that, maybe offer people help outside your actual product, and if you ask for help, give it. So just this probably comes down to building stronger networks, and it will all come back one way or the other. It might not always be a sale or a lead, but you never know. You never really know who you're talking to on the other side of the stage or the email or the post, tweet, whatever. So if you can help out, if somebody approaches you and wants a favor and it's nothing too much out of the way, just do it, even though you do not really see the direct outcome of it. That's maybe another thing I can add.
Cool. For Blockport, we when it comes to lead acquisition, especially for the pre-sale, we had basically nothing to work with, like a very small network of some crypto enthusiasts that were in meetups and stuff. I think like what helped us a lot was also the partnership with ARC. They also were a financial partner and invested in the pre-sale. And what also worked very well for us for lead acquisition was LinkedIn automation, actually. Like if you are not too careful with that, it can become very spammy, but we started out with just very small messages like, hey, we're doing this. What do you think of it? And if people responded, we tried to get into a conversation, and we actually got quite a few investors for the pre-sale during that channel. And it was like basically at no cost.
Okay, so just to kind of recap everything we've gone over. So essentially, okay, so there are two things, pre-ICO and then after. So making sure that essentially you know which channel to go to, something that's relevant for your audience, based on who you're speaking to. Then making sure as well that you have, like we mentioned, lead acquisition, and then using the usual suspect of social media to kind of help raise awareness. So let's talk a little bit about decentralized social media apps. Like, is there anything that you guys are currently testing, playing with, or have your eyes on that you probably, have you tried anything at this point or not really?
Do any exist?
Yeah, there's a few in the market. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah.
Decentralized social media apps? Like,
yeah.
You mean that in any sense of the term, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Steemit's up there. There's a whole bunch of stuff on Blockstack, which are cool. What else is there? Sphere? Okay. I've never used it, but I'm sure it's legit. So, I'll make a comment on Steem. So Steemit.com is only one social media application, a front end on top of the Steem blockchain. There are about 50 different applications on Steem in one form or another. Everything from like Steem Dice to Utopia, which is like a kind of like a GitHub issue and commit incentivization system for doing more work on the Steem blockchain in various different forms. So there's a ton of interesting work happening there. Blockstack actually has loads of cool applications, all of which are very bare bones at the moment, but will probably be cool eventually. I hope so, because I'm using it. And it is actually interesting because on Blockstack you can go and participate there, and you have this sensation, this feeling where like, oh, I own my data, oh, I control access to this thing. Oh, I'm not getting screwed here. But consequently, everything is much simpler for the time being. But other than those two sets, I don't really know anything else that's mature.
Me neither.
Maybe you could also talk about self-hosted alternatives to Slack. Does that qualify as social media, where you like use
Riot,
Rocket Chat, MetaMost, whatever? So maybe that's, I mean, a more practical approach than just putting a blockchain on it. But it's like something that's open source. You have a lot more control over your data, and you can self-host it and also build up your community on, and it's in a way decentralized, because I mean it's not a single company where everybody goes to, but you host it yourself. Maybe that's also. I don't think that was really the question, was it?
No, I don't know. Okay, so what do you think would? Because I mean, what I love, like I said, about blockchain is the fact that we're like the rebel child, like trying to come up with our own growth hacks. So what do you think will sort of prevail? Or I mean, obviously these are all personal opinions, but what do you think will prevail, Pascal, as far as like growth hacks for the blockchain? What kind of special recipe would we recommend?
It's a broad question. There's a lot of growth hacks that are still like effective. There's a lot of databases out there that you can scrape with investors that you can do outreach on, like with said LinkedIn automation tools in order to raise investment or hopefully do some outreach and manage to raise investment. I think using third-party tools, like depending on how effective you feel bounty programs are, we used a third-party tool that was very effective for us. For example, Blockport's open beta came up. We decided to run a contest for the top 500. We'd get priority access to the beta, and we had a very engaged community, so we knew it would work. But like it went off the charts. We had like 1 million participants in that contest trying to get like the priority access. So that worked very well for us.
You said earlier, maybe try things that don't really scale. Dude. Be creative and don't try to like trot down the. Or don't use the path everybody else used before. There's a saying. How does that go?
Take the path less taken.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's really hard because you have to be creative. You can't just copy somebody else's stuff. But I think if you like again stand for something and you are maybe also your own best customer and you scratch your own itch, you will come up with stuff that you personally like. And if other people like it as well, this can be a great growth hack as well.
And while we're talking about adages, there's an adage for that, which is make sure you fire missiles or bullets before you fire a cannon. So just try it. Don't go, hog wild into it.
So, lots of war references here. Let's build bridges. I think two things that work very well, and I think most marketers will definitely say, have your own unique voice, but at the same time, while marketers like to test things, there are things that are controls that they know work well, and they can use that against a test. The two things that work very well personally have been Telegram and also airdrops, to really incentivize the community and to get the message and get the Snapay token out there even more.
You want to go? I can go after you if you want. I'll close.
I think one of the biggest opportunities in this space is just around design and branding. Pretty much the entire space has just shit design and shit branding and shit marketing. Everyone's got nodes running around on their homepage and the hero image, and it looks like every other crypto site. So, if you do anything interesting with your design, with your brand, where you can, there's so much opportunity to actually distinguish yourself from the other bazillion crypto companies or ICOs that are out there. We deal, now that we're post ICO, we talk to people and they're like, what company was it? Blockchain NetStack or was it StackNet blockchain? So just having a name that's, that can help distinguish your brand, having a logo that's not blue, all these little, all of these little things can really help distinguish your crypto company from all of these other ones in the space, because this space was basically built up by finance people and developers, and they don't understand design, they don't understand branding, and so it's a huge opportunity for us, I think, to build real companies with a real ethos behind it.
Okay, so the original question I think was about like blockchain specific growth hacks, and my comment is echoes a lot of what you guys said. We suck at marketing as a community because that's a skill that takes a lot of time to acquire. If you want to learn marketing, the best place to go in the world is Silicon Valley, bar none. But there is one place where we have a unique advantage and where we're actually going to make contributions to the let's say, like the domain of marketing, and that's in incentive mechanisms. So for the first time, we're able to incentivize people way beyond traditional virtual currencies into engaging in pretty dramatic acts. It's like now we've taken the magic that took Warcraft gold years and years and years to make, and a colossal amount of time and energy and the labor of thousands to create that kind of devoted economy just around Warcraft. Now we are able to do that by snapping our fingers. And there's a bunch of really and absolutely fascinating new marketing tactics that are going to come out of that, not just in the consumer marketing like we've seen with things like Steam or like we've seen with like the basic ICO model, but most especially in the B2B world, where you're going to see a variety of enterprises coming together and forming de facto cartels around some new asset and some commonly shared database that they're going to use. And they're going, that's where the interesting marketing work that's going to come only out of crypto is going to happen, using these, what they are as exotic financial assets to incentivize a disparate group of companies to come together and create some common good for themselves.
Yeah, so I would Google behavioral economics, type 1, type 2 thinking. It's super powerful. It's been around for decades. I use this in health tech. I mean, if you can engage someone to lose 10 kilos, you can engage them to buy a device. So really tap into that side, see what's being done there. It's super powerful. And then also in terms of growth hacks, I mean, it's all about, we always hear network effect. Well, right now we don't see new incumbents coming in or new retail investors coming in. It's just the market. So the current network are those that are in crypto, understand crypto. So tap into those successful cryptocurrency companies that maybe did a really good ICO and has a good network, good following. I mean, we were very fortunate to partner with Syndicated very, very early on, which helped us out tremendously. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between both companies, and we were able to leverage their network, and now some of our biggest followers are also Syndicated followers. So, but we talked about that, and we talked about the value, not just partnering for partnering, but like partner with intention, right? I mean, sometimes I'll get approached by someone in biz dev. They're like, "Hey, I got this company. They want to partner with us," and I'm like, "That looks stupid. We're not talking about that." And you have to actually be your own advocate, protect your brand, right? Don't just talk about partnering to partner. And I think that's a really important thing. So, leverage other networks that exist via strategic partners.
All right, so let's open up the floor for questions.
Oh, okay. My question is for what would be your advice for new startups, whether they're in their idea phase or they're looking to do, let's say, a seed round, something that I'm doing right now, with regards to marketing themselves to the community. So whether it's, I heard a lot of stuff about targeting to your audience, but I hear that, for ICOs or private placements, marketing is the #1 determining factor. So if you have, let's say, a limited budget and you can't hire a full-service marketing agency, what should people do from your perspective?
Shouldn't hire a full-service marketing agency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. So that's why I'm asking, what would be your advice to people like the startups out there?
So maybe I'll answer this since I did not do an ICO. The best advice I can give you would be 2 things. One is get out the door. Literally, go talk to whoever your customers might be. And second, in whatever shape or form your MVP is, get it out the door as well. Because speaking about what you'd like to do and so forth, is not going to be as impactful as showing people what you have, because investors will always say, well, what's in it for me? Are customers using it? Do you have traction? So in retrospect, when I look at all of the time I lost, and time is more important than money, I think it's the currency of the future actually, you can never get your time back. And so your time would be better spent, I think personally in retrospect, on focusing on your product and building your team than just pitching and pitching. Because when investors see you have a product, they'll be like, oh yeah, I get it, okay, good. And then when you have traction, like even 10 customers, they'll be like, okay, people actually want to use it and it works.
Right. So I would say make sure you incorporate in the right place. So my background before getting bit by the crypto bug was health tech, and regulations are a son of a bitch in marketing. And I think that up until essentially now, this market has been basically the Wild West and do what you want. And I don't think really anyone here has data to support whether or not marketing is going to work in a regulated sector for cryptocurrency at all. So make sure you pick the right market that has a framework in place and then move forward with what she said.
Yeah, definitely do your incorporation paperwork, get your papers right with you and your team members in writing, make sure everything's clear in terms of equity and voting rights, all of that non-fun stuff, which is so very critical.
The ICO space is like an inverted startup model. You're going to market with your marketing and you're building the product later, which is totally weird to anyone who's been in the startup VC space for a long time. So what you want to do is get that first $1 million in seed money so that you can go out and start marketing, so that you can get the flywheel spinning where, you know, every $10 that comes in, $1 goes back out to marketing to continue to build up your community, build up awareness, et cetera. You know, you'll never get anywhere with an ICO model trying to build everything first, because you're putting all this money into a product that no one really cares about because they're speculating, which is 95% of the people who are going to invest in your project. They don't care what the project is. They just want it to moon. Sadly, I mean, this is the current ecosystem. So if you get $1 million, do not go spend $1 million on developing a product. Spend that $1 million to get the infrastructure going so that you can raise the amount of money you're raising, right? You're trying to get your seed round, your A round, your B round, and your C round all in 3 to 6 months. You don't have time to build a product and show traction. And no one's expecting you to do that because, again, the people who are investing in this project are not from the VC world. They're from the crypto world. So they're looking at projects like Tron and OMG, and like the guy who was moderating the panel before who, you know, referred to Dogecoin as successful, even though they're successful because they have a huge market cap. You know, they're not successful because they have a product that people are using.
Yeah, I very much agree, and I also think that the ICO space is this inverted model. I think it would be interesting to discover, like, whatever your value proposition is, if it resonates with any company in the existing market, and see if you can find or land a partnership or do an AMA in one of their communities, because usually they'll offer it for free if it like resonates with them as well. And that could give you an initial boost to get, well, traction, so to speak, in your community, but not so much product traction. But I do think that the ICO market like looks more towards like, okay, can they build a community? Can they market the product? So yeah.
Just to follow up on that really quick, and
crazy,
they want to
man.
see that.
That's crazy. Like that mindset. Okay, so I've been in this game for a while, right? I've done a whole bunch of raises, and I'm completely against that perspective because we have totally shot ourselves in the foot. All our entrepreneurs, not all of them, a lot of them are, they've inherited this horrible mindset about in what order you go to market and how you go out and build a product, and it's poisoning their businesses. And I have a list of friends who have raised money.
Talking about VCs or ICOs?
I'm talking about ICOs.
Okay.
I mean, VCs, of course, have not the best
Sorry,
track record either, but ICO startups. Like it's really, really, really bad. You want a good example of what to do, look at IPFS and Protocol Labs. Minus their ridiculously sized and totally overvalued raise, they built a project 4 years and a community around that 4 years, which is IPFS, and then they raised money for Filecoin, being very particular about timing it after they had proven everybody's chops and proven that people wanted and were willing to pay for it.
How many people here use Filecoin?
How many people here have ever touched or heard of IPFS?
But okay.
So are you suggesting that all these ICOs should build products before they go? I mean, this is the whole point, right?
Okay, so
Suggesting like
middleman.
why don't you go? Why don't you go?
So I think it's important to remember that some have to bootstrap, some have been mining Bitcoin since 2011, right? Some people don't have the capacity to handle 2 or 3 years, no revenue, no extra equity, no new tokens, no sales. And so I think there is a level of, and we've seen this, well, no, maybe we've just seen the one extreme, which is raising $50 million and no product 3 years later. We've seen that extreme. I think what we need is some type of model that really just doesn't exist right now, and it should. You know, like in the VC space, right? You receive funding in tranches. You receive it over time as you hit milestones. Well, why don't ICOs just do milestone raises? Hey, we've hit this after 8 months. We've done this after 16 months. Now we're going to raise another. But why go for the whole shebang when there's so much unknown? And I think that would start to mitigate a lot of risks, probably start to invite more VCs into the space, and probably classify it more as a security token.
I think, first of all, as marketers, we'd all shoot ourselves if we had to do an ICO every 6 to 12 months, if you've been through one. But, I mean, also, that's a huge distraction for the business, right? The entire business, this is the same problem that we have in the VC world. You go out, you raise money, and then 6 months or 12 months later, you need more money because you're running out of cash. And so the CEO isn't in the business anymore. He's out with his hand out to VCs trying to get the next round of funding. So if you went into this trench model, it would be the same thing. Just the entire company, except for the developers, would now, again, be focused on doing another raise rather than actually trying to, fulfill the business goals.
We have seen the whole VC model work because we've seen unicorns, right? We've seen that if you go VC route, you can become successful with customers and products, and they had to go through that ridiculous route, right? What I'm saying is we really haven't seen, maybe besides Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the Holy Grail that is Ripple, we really haven't seen many, sign up customers say, hey, we have traction, we have revenue, and I don't
think we've seen any of these like third wave of ICOs. I don't think there's a single one that we could point to and say this is a successful ICO.
Security tokens, STOs.
Which one?
Exactly.
Okay, so I mean, we're still in this same boat. To say that the VC model works, to me, because there's 25 unicorns and 250,000 companies that got VC money that failed, to me that model doesn't work.
So if I may interject here, I think it's very interesting when we talk about the VC model because as a female founder, females get 4.2% of all venture capital funding. And what I find about the ICO world is that it democratizes funding. Whereas instead of going to one centralized place that has a ton of money, there are a ton of people who have a little bit of money that believe in you, believe in your product, believe in your team, etc. So if we can take the best of both worlds and marry them together, and like somebody said earlier, we are growing up and we're learning what works and what doesn't work. So I don't think one is the end-all, be-all solution, but to be able to take the best of each industry is going to be the best path forward.
All right, well, thank you guys for a very heated